Secretary Pompeo, China is planning to open a new mega embassy in London. It's 20,000 square feet big. There have been a lot of investigations into the plans, the designs, the blueprints. The blueprints for the basement of that proposed embassy are redacted and they won't be published. The Labour government here is really backing it. What does it say about China's approach to Europe and the UK that the People's Republic of China want to open their biggest embassy here in Britain?
Well, let's begin with the problem set. The problem set is that the Chinese Communist Party wants the people of this country here in the United Kingdom to live a very different life than the one that they live, and they're prepared to invest into all that they need to do to undermine it. And so this is an enormous mistake. This will be a spy ring. This will be an espionage hub. When I was a Secretary of State, we closed the Chinese consulate in Houston, Texas. They were running what was the then biggest spy operation against the United States of America in all of history, out of that very diplomatic facility, very much like the one that they're going to build here. The people who come here will come as diplomats or economic advisors. They will be working directly for the Chinese intelligence service called the MSS, or for Xi directly as part of one of his political operatives, and they will be reaching out all throughout your communities to shape the minds of the British people.
And you have a background, of course, at the highest level in intelligence because you were CIA director. What will those people actually be wanting to achieve and do in practical terms in London? So let's say China opens the mega embassy. They have a huge diplomatic list. They send 150 diplomats under so-called official cover. But what do they actually do all day?
Yes, what they do all day. Various tasks. Their primary mission set is to learn, to go absorb information. What does that mean? That means going and meeting with business leaders, friendly, hey, we'd like to come invest in your country, we'd like to buy this piece of real estate, it'll all look happy and joyous. The truth of the matter is this is a national effort to reach deep inside the United Kingdom and understand precisely what's going on and steal intellectual capital. So ideas, innovation, creativity, intellectual property, all the things that are really valuable to the United Kingdom and to the West for themselves. They will then be working to shape and influence. So there is also what I'd call an influence operation that gets run by these folks. They will be going to schools, meeting with your children and grandchildren and saying, look at our model and look at your model, and man, isn't it really bad? Your NHS is 60 months to get a hip replacement. We do it in an hour, right? Yeah. They'll be telling these stories that are fraudulent and false, but nonetheless shaping the minds of the next generation to undermine the most basic important things that the United Kingdom has. They've done it in the United States. They continue to work at it. And I can only promise you that of those 150 folks who come here with diplomatic passports, the vast majority of them have no role in diplomacy. You can do diplomacy with about 3 people here in the United Kingdom, or maybe 15. You certainly don't need 100 or 150.
And we saw a big change in the UK's approach to China. I mean, it's probably the biggest foreign policy shift since the Conservatives left government. The Conservatives, by the end of their time in office, they were in power for 14 years. By the end of that period, they'd really cooled on China. It wasn't the case at the start. Mm-hmm. Maybe the relationship developed, but since Starmer came to power, he's met directly with President Xi. His team, his cabinet have had bilateral meetings with their equivalents in China. There seems to be a real policy of normal engagement with PRC China now from the UK government. How's that shaping the UK's relationship, particularly with the US and the EU around the world? It's quite a change.
It is quite a change. I remember, I think it was then Prime Minister Johnson. He'd been Foreign Secretary Johnson, and it was then Prime Minister. We came to talk to them about Huawei, a particular technology, but the truth is it was just a proxy for the challenge of the Chinese Communist Party inside the gates. And that's how I think about it in the United States. Like, I worry about Taiwan, I worry about the Philippines. We got to do all kinds of hard power activities, but man, they are just operating inside of our countries. And to see Keir Starmer and the Labour Party now say, they're really not an adversary. Yeah, they're a competitor at some level, but we compete with Germany and France. That is a fundamental misunderstanding of the challenge that's presented. They are not a traditional competitor. They are a traditional adversary. And once you miss the predicate, once you miss that baseline, then you'll go meet with them, and you'll round the corners, and they'll show up with a bunch of money in their pocket, and pretty soon they'll be building something, whether it's an embassy or a bridge or stadium inside your country, and they will be using it for their purposes, not for commercial purposes, but for Chinese military, diplomatic, and economic power with 100% certainty.
So if you were CIA director in role now, and you had the opportunity to advise Keir Starmer and the new Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper about what they should be doing with the mega embassy and what they should be doing with UK-China policy, what would you say to them? Do they need to change course?
They do. I would tell them, don't let them build the embassy. They've got a perfectly fine one. It's great. Make sure it's safe and healthy. We don't want anybody hurt. And if it's a little outdated, provide some more electricity and the ability to have Wi-Fi. Whatever it is they need. Why on earth would you permit them to build a state-of-the-art, massive diplomatic facility that will be used as essentially as an outstation for the Chinese Communist Party? The second thing I would say to them is, I get it. We all have big trading relationships. The United States has big trading relationships. Our businesses are involved in things in China. If they want to build beach balls and sell them at your stores here in Britain, that seems fine to me. Mm-hmm. But we should be, as an economic matter, the United Kingdom, Europe, the United States, and our friends in Asia, South Korea, Japan, Australia, India, we should be developing an economic model together that delivers against this Chinese economic juggernaut that in the end will fundamentally reshape our security situation for decades to come. So that would be my wisdom to them. I doubt that they'll take much of it. I hope the Trump administration will take this up too. Mm-hmm. In the first Trump administration, it took us a little bit to get to that place as well. And frankly, the Biden team did okay. They weren't awful. They weren't as vigorous as I would have hoped. But now the Trump administration has a real opportunity to, as I think Secretary Besson said yesterday, he was in Spain yesterday with his Chinese counterparts, and he said they're taking a very aggressive position. And I think Secretary Besson knows that's not a surprise to anyone. They'll be aggressive here too. Every Western government, those of us who believe in freedom and liberty, have to push back against this. We can, and when we do, we'll win.
If China-Taiwan became a kinetic war, in which the United States would obviously be a huge player. If that happened, the closest, most proximate, most useful British military presence traditionally has always been the base on Diego Garcia.
Yes, absolutely.
Called the Chagos Islands, or indeed was a British overseas territory, so it was under UK sovereignty. The Labour government came in, and very quickly last year they moved rapidly to transfer sovereignty over the islands, including Diego Garcia, but with the exception of the base area,
right,
to Mauritius, which is a deep ally of China, like many countries in the Indo-Pacific. What is the significance of Chagos? Why does it matter? What is Diego Garcia? It's not a place that any Brit has ever been to because you're not actually allowed to go, which I think might be part of the issue in understanding it. You have seen the real details about what happens there. So
I have, and while I can't share everything, I can share with your audience. This is an absolutely critical asset for Western security. In the same way that when the United States abandoned Bagram Air Force Base, we always thought about that as, that's for Afghanistan. This was a deep strategic asset that President Biden handed over for the United Kingdom to make this decision to transfer control of the islands. And I get it; they're small and they seem a long ways away. Is an extraordinary national security mistake for the West. And the Trump administration so far hasn't stepped in to say, hey, don't do that. I hope that they will. We all need the capacity to project power in the event that the Chinese Communist Party becomes even more aggressive than it is today. And that asset, that United Kingdom, this glorious jewel of Western security, NATO's efforts, is really important. We do lots of things from there, but make no mistake about it, the ability to get resources, supplies, and other national security instruments into the theater in the event that the Chinese Communist Party becomes very aggressive and we have to respond. A linchpin of that is the capacity that sits today at that place. Whether we have anything there in the moment or not, it is an important geographic spot and a resource that we ought not give up when there's, frankly, no good reason to do so. I understand history and colonialism. Fair enough. This is about the security of the British people, and to be so foolish as to say our colonial legacy is going to stand in the way of making sure that my grandchildren get to live in a world that they want to seems foolish at best to me.
The Trump administration have been very careful actually what they've said about Chagos. So there was a meeting between Keir Starmer and Donald Trump in the Oval Office back in February, and in that meeting, Starmer mentioned the Chagos deal because it was obviously one of his key top lines to get across the line in terms of the relationship with the US. President Trump kind of touched on it in the Oval Office, but he didn't exactly give it his full weighty backing. Yeah. Do you think there's still time in Washington and in the US administration to change the direction on Chagos? There's been a lot of opposition in Congress, open opposition.
Yeah. No, by the way, this in the United States seems less political than you're describing to me. There is a much more bipartisan consensus on the risk from the Chinese Communist Party. So I think you're right. Many legislators from both the Republican Party, my party, and the Democrat Party would say, no, let's not do this. Not now, at least, while this tension is as high as maybe 20 years from now. Things will change. I hope the Trump administration will come in and be stronger in opposing what Starmer's doing. I must say, too, when we get into domestic politics on this, I find it odd that that the Labor Party, that this little small piece of the Labor Party at least, is so wedded to handing over Britain's security. It's really quite stunning to me as an American to observe that.
So the National Security Advisor, a guy called Jonathan Powell, who was a chief of staff to Tony Blair back in the day, he described the Chagos Islands as a group of tiny islands in the middle of the Indian Ocean where no one actually goes. And that's the take of the current serving National Security Advisor in the UK, which I think kind of sums up Labour's political position.
Yeah, that's something. By the way, he's factually correct, but strategically just an absolute fool. Right? So it is a small group of islands, and it is in the Indian Ocean, and no one does travel there. You don't travel there. I don't travel there as a civilian. But a lot of military power can and will move through there in the event that we need it. And if we hand it over, we all know the storyline with Mauritius. Mauritius is a close ally of the Chinese Communist Party, and not only will we lose it, but you will have Chinese power projection from that place. So it's not just our inability to do it; it is the inverse of that. And I don't know if that's 2 years or 5 years or 10 years down the line, but that singular move will give the Mauritius government more capacity to control the space. You do not want Chinese aircraft flying over Europe out of these islands. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's nuts.
The British Army is now at a capacity of around 72,000. It's the smallest it's been since, I think, the Napoleonic Wars. So the smallest in 2 centuries.
Yeah.
What do you say to those in the UK who are pretty pessimistic about the UK's role in European and global defence? There was a caucus of commentators and politicians, albeit small but sometimes growing, who think that the UK is just irrelevant now when it comes to the UK-US security partnership. It's not a big deal. We don't really bring anything to the table. Yeah. You know, as somebody who's worked at the highest level in US defence, what does the UK bring to the table in practical terms if we only have 72,000 troops?
No, that's a very small force. I would encourage you to advocate for having more capacity. It's not even just people. There's lots of tools outside of the a big. By the way, as a former Army officer, sign me up for more tanks always, even though they may have lost their moment. That understanding of the UK and that it's irrelevant to the United States or more broadly even to European security doesn't reflect my experience remotely. The United Kingdom were great partners, high-end specialty operators. When I was the intelligence chief for the United States, your intelligence services, internal service at 5, the external service at MI6, the GCHQ crew, world-class, very useful to collection and the use of that intelligence around the world, fantastic intelligence partners, and for our special operators operating in places far-flung across the world. It was always great to see a Brit there, right? Because we knew we spoke the same language. When I mean that, I don't mean English. I mean the same understanding about the capacity to train and operate together. Not irrelevant. I hope you will, here in the United Kingdom, invest more and continue to expand on those services, but there are a whole host of capabilities where the scale may well be small compared to the United States or elsewhere, but its importance is not remotely small. It's very important to the United States to have a partner and a friend. And you also pace Europe, which matters an awful lot as well. As UK continues to expand its capabilities, Europeans are more likely to do that for themselves. And so the net effect of that, very important to us in America.
So if you move away from numbers and capabilities, and think about what's happening in the discussion in the West broadly. there seems to be a bit of a crisis of confidence in some quarters about what the purpose of Western civilization is. Should we be advocating boldly for Western values? Is democracy necessarily as superior to authoritarianism? I mean, we've had polls in the UK recently saying that even a large number of younger people in the UK are beginning to question the core tenets of democracy. They're finding it difficult to get on the housing ladder. They're finding it difficult to have children. They're finding it difficult to see real wages growing up. And they're looking at other countries around the world which are run on different terms. And they're saying, well, let's look at some of these systems. And, you know, they seem to be booming in terms of economic growth and business. How do we counter that? And what's your take on where that's going in the UK?
3 thoughts. First of all, one of my core critiques for the United Kingdom is you all should be more bullish on yourselves. To your point, you asked the question, are we irrelevant? Hell no. You're incredibly important. We like the Magna Carta matters, right? These ideas, right? This whole the essence of the United Kingdom matters to the United States. And saying we're going to have a second state visit in a couple days, where President Trump's going to come here. That's not random, and it's not just the pomp and the circumstance. There'll be that. It's deeper and more important than that. So I would just urge. I would urge conservatives here in the United Kingdom to be bold and proud of the things you're doing. That doesn't mean there's not stuff that both Republicans, conservatives haven't done poorly. We've had bad leaders sometimes, and we get things wrong. That's all fine. My second thought is this: if the United Kingdom and the United States can't appreciate how we have shaped the security and health and prosperity of the world over the last century, that is just an enormous failure of our educational institutions, and partly reflective of what we were speaking about before. The Chinese Communist Party wants to convince the next generation that their model works and ours sucks. That embassy is going to, its core mission every morning when they get up is convince the British people that they should not be confident in their model and that our model is better, and they'll show pictures of successful, happy Chinese people. I would ask you this. How many British students want to go study in Beijing? And how many would like to go study in America? I don't know where, someplace they want to go study at Harvard or Yale or Berkeley. I'd suggest those are all not perfect places to go study. Go study at the University of Kansas in my home state, or Kansas State or Oklahoma State. But we have to recognize that model has failed. For all of civilization. Socialist or communist models have failed at the most fundamental things. What are those most fundamental things? We know what they are. The capacity to practice your faith, to be deeply convicted about what it is you believe in. As a Christian, it's me believing as Jesus Christ is my Savior. Others have different views. Jewish people, right? Islamic people even, right? They have the ability to practice one's own faith is absolutely essential. And the freedom that comes alongside that, the liberty, these things matter. And then secondarily, they also turn out to deliver the best economic outcomes for the most people. There is no chance that the next billion people on the earth will mostly live south of the equator. There is no chance that they will have the food that they need to sustain themselves if we adopt the model of Xi Jinping. It fails each and every time. It will ultimately fail the Chinese people. That country will go from 1.4 billion people to less than 1 billion over the course of the coming decades. No civilization, no country has ever survived that kind of population decline. Why did it happen? They had a one-child policy, and they couldn't feed people. And so people now decided, we don't want to have children. And of course, no one is going to immigrate to China. Who wants to live under that totalitarian regime? And so now our model works. We should be confident. We should speak about that confidence every day. It's not arrogance. That's one of the things I see in the United Kingdom. They think, gosh, if I say United Kingdom is great, it feels like we're boasting or we're bragging. It's not that. It's a confidence in the knowledge that it is a system that delivers good outcomes for people, and the pride in knowing that you, as a citizen of the United Kingdom or a citizen of the United States, play some small role in delivering that outcome for not only the people of your own country, but for the world.
So I think a lot of Brits look at that and they say, in the US, you have patriotism in a kind of full fat, we would say, in terms of milk, right? Yeah. It's full fat patriotism. You do the Pledge of Allegiance. There's no debate whatsoever about flying the US flag from your home. In the UK, the debate is slightly different. But I think it is changing. How can conservatives in the UK grapple with the fact that we have a Labour government that's doing so many detrimental things to that view of the world, on Chagos, for example, and sort of get the UK back on track? I mean, do you agree with the Trump team that there's the crisis of free speech in the UK? People are very concerned about crime. They're worried that social order is disintegrating, particularly in London. What's your take as an experienced American observer when you actually come to London and touch down?
Yeah. So when I come to London, I see it a little bit, but mostly I'm about facts and data. I don't think there's any doubt that the crime rates in the city of London are abhorrent. And most importantly, don't need to be. That is good, sound policies that say we're going to punish criminals. Fix this. In the end, there's both you pull the bad guys off the street, and then you punish those who do. So you deter, and you get both that. And second, I think the United Kingdom, much like the United States for the last years, had immigration policies that didn't reflect our deepest values. Our deepest values are clearly around making sure that we allow people to come here who make sense for our nation to come here, and those who are violating our laws or who don't want to be part of our traditions and the model that we've adopted in our country now coming on 250 years this year. We should be very clear. We have no obligation to take everyone. It's not possible, nor is it consistent with how, at least in the United States, our founders thought about it. And so, you see that here. You see crime problems, and then they, in my judgment, lead to cultural challenges as well. And when I say cultural challenges, it's an absence of respect for families. It's an absence of respect for a basic rule of law. We had our woke, call it whatever, our woke nuttiness, peaked maybe 24 months ago. We had just crazy things. And then one last thought here, and this I think maybe gets to what you were describing in terms of the Labour government here. We are not the problem. Right? I think what often happens in left governments across the world is they see themselves as the problem in the world. President Obama had this, right? He goes on this apology tour in 2010, apologizing for America's role in the Middle East. Are you kidding me? We've gone there and saved so many lives. Hey, did we get things wrong in Iraq in terms of, they can all put that debate aside. If you ask, were we there with a noble intention of delivering better outcomes for the people of the Middle East? The answer is unequivocally yes. And so we ought not turn first to America as the problem, but indeed the West as the solution. And I think that gets to the confidence I was speaking to. If you get that piece wrong, and I think Prime Minister Starmer's government begins with the predicate of we have to be careful because maybe we're not right. That leads to all of the things that you've been describing. We are right, and it's not about. It's not about being arrogant or saying no. You all are bad. It's simply this model that has served each of our nations so well for so long is the right model. I believe if you gave me 30 minutes, I could prove it out to you and convince at least many, if not all. And we ought to go work towards that every day. And I hope the Conservative Party here will grab that mantle. If it does, it will be successful politically, and that matters. But more importantly, it will be successful at delivering over decades good outcomes for the British people.
I've got two final questions. You know in detail the link between immigration and security. It's a perspective that I think a lot of people in the UK don't have, because we've had really high, historically high immigration. People are now seriously questioning the cultural impact. They are concerned about the economic impact. They're concerned about the impact on law and order. What's the security impact when you have weak border security? We look at what President Trump is doing now with ICE and the border security crackdown. A lot of people, and not all of them conservatives, a lot of people in the UK want that. And that's why they are moving towards reform, and why reform are so far ahead in the polls. They want to see tough border policing. What's the link between immigration and security?
When you don't know who's coming into your country, the risk that there will be a really bad day increases substantially. I don't know how to say it with any more brevity or clarity. One of the things that I continue to talk about as President Biden allowed millions of people to pour across our borders, we talk about our southern border a lot, but they came in lots of places. They came to our airports and then just stayed. Our adversaries see that, and they'll put folks in, and not just intelligence people. We know the history of 9/11, right? We know that they will work to infiltrate and to embed and then to deliver really bad days for our country. It's never been the case that we've allowed so many people to come in a way that risked that fundamental security.
Do you think that
and by the way, the last thing to say is sometimes it seems insurmountable. It's like, oh my gosh, it's overwhelmed, it's too big. President Trump has demonstrated, even just the last 6 months, that it is possible to both secure your borders, clean up the history of failed folks, that is, go identify folks who are committing crimes or present security risks, and then finally to develop immigration policies that actually make sense for your country. So it's possible to do once you keep hope, and you just need leadership here in the United Kingdom that's prepared to do that.
There's one more security aspect on Iran, which has become a massive growing issue in the UK recently. We've seen in London attacks or proxy attacks on journalists who are critical of the Iranian regime. There seems to be quite a significant uptick in hostile activity in the UK, which is linked to Iran. Why are the Iranians interested in doing that in the UK, the Iranian regime? And what is your view on when that regime falls? It looked last year like the wheels were coming off in Tehran for the regime there. A lot of people are worried about the extent of that impact in the UK.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm not unbiased. They're still trying to kill me. They have a bounty on my head. So you should take my Iran views with that foreknowledge. Second, the reason they're operating here is the same ways they operate all around the globe, right? Assassination campaigns, denying free speech, shaping the views in places like the United Kingdom to make it a more anti-Semitic place, right? The narrative is Israel as the small Satan, the United States as the great Satan. They're telling that story. They've assassinated people in Europe. They've worked in the United States on the ground. There was an assassination attempt on some civilians. They've come after myself and Ambassador Bolton.
They tried to assassinate you in Paris, right?
It's a global campaign, not just against former government officials, but against all of those who speak out against the regime.
How does that feel?
You just live your life, right? You have a security team, you do the work, but in the end, you live your life, and that's how my wife and my family have just come to understand that. So we try to be prudent in the way that we behave, but in the end, you do the things you need to do to continue living. You asked the most important question at the end. We want good things for the Iranian people. We don't want them to have to emigrate out to go live good lives. We want to be able to live good lives in Iran. We know the history, the Persian history, the culture, 80 million people, many of whom don't live in that urban place in Tehran. They live in wonderful, wonderful places. I don't know when the regime falls, but I do know this. We can shape that. I was happy to see the United Kingdom be part of one of the E3 who said they would do snapback. It's a little bit in the weeds, but put more pressure on the regime's nuclear program. I was thrilled to see what the Israelis were able to accomplish against Hezbollah and Hamas, not because I enjoy killing, but because these people are trying to kill the West, and we should be very vigorous about pushing back against them. And an Iran with a nuclear weapon would be a very, very bad day for the United Kingdom and for the United States. And then we ought to do all that we can to enable the Iranian people to change the nature of the regime. If you're a mom or dad or grandma or grandpa in Iran, your best hope is that this regime fundamentally goes away, that this revolutionary regime goes away. It's not that you may not be a Shia and a believer in the faith. It is that they deliver really bad outcomes, and they torture innocent people. I still will never understand. I guess I have a theory, but I never understand the left. Or these are people who throw homosexuals off of buildings, and yet the radical left says, no, we're going to go be against Israel. These things I have trouble holding in my head simultaneously. And so you asked, the United Kingdom government can do a lot of work to keep its own people safe against the threat here from Iran. Immigration enforcement would be a piece of that. Law enforcement would be an even more significant piece of it. But the United Kingdom can also play a role. They've had historically deep relationships in Iran, can play an important role in helping the Iranian people deliver an outcome that's really good for them and that in turn will provide security here at home as well.
So in 1 minute, if you were delivering the president's daily brief, which he used to deliver, the security briefing to the president of the United States, if you had to do that job and help Keir Starmer understand what's going on in the world and get the UK back on track on Chagos, on China Embassy, what's the briefing?
The brief would start with, Sir, you're the president of the greatest nation in the history of civilization. Let's make sure that we pass that on to the next generation. The 3 things that you can do to make sure that we get that right. And this is a little beyond the CIA director's brief, going to my Secretary of State role. But first, China. The Chinese Communist Party is the only country that has the capacity and the intent to undermine the global system that has benefited the West for, in the post-World War II order, 75 years plus now. Second, Mr. President, hard power still matters. We can do lots of great things in diplomacy. We can all do great intelligence operations. In the end, hard power, the ability for your Secretary of State, Mr. President, to sit at the table across from the Chinese with them knowing that that guy's got a big old tool in his holster matters, right? That he's got the capacity to inflict enormous costs if they act in a way that's inconsistent. And then finally, speak about this in a way that is lovely. Speak about Western civilization and our core values, our Judeo-Christian traditions in the United States, and our understanding of these basic freedoms in a way that is decent and lovely and is inclusive of people from a broad range. And when you do that, it'll create more political power for you, which is good. But most importantly, it will be sending the right message to our adversaries and to our friends and those we want to be alongside of us, that we are fundamentally decent and we are looking for good outcomes, and that we are, in fact, that great hope for the world. There you go, Mr. President.
Secretary Pompeo, thanks for embracing the new media that's reaching conservatives in the UK and coming and reaching out in the new format.
Thanks for what you're doing. Keep at it.